The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people were evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spend a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. There's still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, a group would just jump in and help out. So it was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
Aloha everybody, I am geologist Philip Ong, here with Mr. Dane DuPont, on behalf of Hawaii Tracker, hawaiitracker.com. I'm bringing you guys another Kīlauea volcano update, and a little bit of Mauna Loa too today. Today, March 12th, 2021, and the 82nd day, I believe, of this ongoing Kilauea eruption. So I'm starting off here showing you guys a little bit of the follow-up of, if you guys have been watching our channel, seen our quick updates. You kind of know that there's been a big pond that's built up here on the side of this west vent, and that's been a major change here in the volcano. So we're going to look at the details of this sequence here a little bit. We'll look at a little bit of the Lower East Rift Zone videos that have been put out by the USGS. We'll look at some of the time-lapse images of what's happened since then to kind of put it all together for you guys. And meanwhile, Dana will be manning the chat, taking your guys' questions, checking our streams. We'll be taking some questions, a couple points during our summary here today. All right, so starting off here, wanted to play and add on to you guys a little bit of that update that we did as far as that perched pond, right? So we're looking at the west vent here from the S1 camera, web camera from the USGS Hawaiian Volcano Observatory, and it's been pouring lava through a tubed over, kind of crusted over right in here, lava channel. And the exit point has been done in here. And this is where all the flow of this lava lake, which has been changing in its own way, has been coming from this one point. So kind of off to the side, only by a few yards or meters, but it's kind of built up this big area. And from there was spilling over multiple points into the lava lake. And kind of having built up this area, this little wedge that's in between this perch ridge of the lava lake and the crater wall. It used to be a little trough. It's actually built up a little, like a little mesa, a little flat-topped plateau here that was full of lava. And the walls of this thing right here and right here eventually couldn't hold in all the lava that was building up on the inside of this thing. So the whole thing slides out this way towards this lava lake and pours in. So let's check it out here in a little more detail. This first clip is zoomed in from the S1 camera of the USGS Hawaiian Volcano Observatory. And you can see the main west vent is right in here, this section, putting lava into the lava lake at the entry point that's been persistent for the last few months. And this northeast section is the one that's been reactivated. See, I've clipped here a few hours from March the 7th from the USGS Hawaiian Volcano Observatory's S1 camera. And you can kind of see it builds up this perched lava pond, visible right in here. And see it spills over into the lava lake in several locations before it actually bursts forth more in here, and the whole interior of that pond drains out right through here. And the stream, which has now become persistent over the several days since then. So we now have 2 entry points in the lava lake from the west vent. Let's show you guys here, zoomed out view. So we're looking at the section right in here. Here's our main entry
Not frozen,
point.
are you?
This is before that secondary outburst began. And let's play it for you guys. There it is. It begins right over there. It puts out this more silver colored lava flow. In the nighttime, you can see it a little bit better along the crater wall right over there. The main activity being right in here, and then putting a new entry right in there. And I see it's actually become higher on this backside than the lava lake edge right over here. And we'll zoom in one more time, play it a little bit slower in a full sequence here. So here's our west vent. There's our new northeast section flow. See our area right in here is where we're building in a perched lava pond. You can see it builds, it crusts over. There's an entry point that persists right through here, and this is where the main bulk will drain out. And there it goes right there. You actually can saw a little bit of movement of the wall of the pond over on this side and this side that kind of sag outwards and allow that lava in the interior to be released into the lava lake. Okay, so we can see this on the thermal as well. Here it is. Oh, back to the thermal. There's that side flow. It was long to start before it builds up this base right in here and builds the perched lava pond right in here. We're now looking at a thermal camera from the west, so slightly different view than the previous angle. But we can kind of see it builds up a crust, cooler colors, and now you can see it draining back in right in there. Let me rewind that since I just drew over it. Put it back over here. Yeah, just a small draining, still filling the lava lake, and the big draining comes right about here. See the sagging of that, cracking, and the cooler colors of the crust right in there. Right, and that's the thermal view, and we can kind of zoom out a little bit and see it, look at this in the context of here's a view of past week and a half or so, showing that main and wet entry point in the west vent, and here's our new one that's persisted now for the last few days. All this within this initially more of a crescent earlier last month shaped lava lake that's been receding from its south and from its north into this more of an oval shape. And all this while feeding lava beneath this crust in the backside and injecting lava up through the cracks and these occasional worm flows on the edges. So we can see that the shape of the active surface of the lava lake has been changing. Not only that, but we can kind of see here, this is a clip from the S1 camera daytime for several months now. And I'll play this on a loop. We're just showing the level of the lava lake rising relative to the west vent. And I know there's a lot of flicker and it's kind of jerky. This is the best view from the S1 cam, I apologize. The point is, you can see right in here, the lava lake level rising relative to the west vent. So as the exit point of lava into the lava lake changes, you may have adjustments like a reactivation of this northeast section of the west vent, only a few meters or yards away. So we have some imagery here from the USGS. This is a image that I've color corrected here. You can kind of see from the upper area of the west vent, there's a spatter and there's a steep channel and an exit point near the base of the cone that comes around into the lava lake. This is the perched edge, the perched rim, the perched lava lake, and the main entry point we've seen vary over the last few weeks and months as the pressure changes on the volcano. This began, here's a view before the new lava flow came out of that northeast section. And USGS reports have referred to this in various ways, and so here are some of the excerpts of their reports. The northeast section of the west vent, just several meters or yards away, has been feeding another lava flow near the lake since March 5th. On Friday, HVO geologists observed a breakout from the west vent within Halemaumau crater at the summit of Kīlauea volcano. No glow or spatter could be seen an hour before the breakout occurred on the northern side of the cone, but loud hissing noises from the vent area were audible to field crews. The activity began with weak incandescent spatter being thrown from the top of the cone at 11:45 a.m. Hawaiian Standard Time, gradually increasing in vigor for about 30 minutes. The molten spatter fed two small lava channels down the northeast side of the cone. The flows merged at the base of the cone and continued to flow along the northern stagnant lava lake margin. What you guys can see right in here, lava exit points and flowing along that northeast lava lake margin, with a barrier, the perched rim, that's holding in this bigger lava lake that's in the foreground from the side flow that builds this perched pond. As the lava flow continued from the northeast side of the west vent, it spread across the inactive crust of the northwest lava lake margin and eventually spilled over into the active lava lake. Lava also continued to enter the lava lake from the inlet at the base of the west vent. By midday yesterday, this flow had built a perched lava pond on the northwest lake margin, but it abruptly collapsed into the main lava lake just after 1 p.m. Since then, the flow from the northeast section of the vent has stabilized into a second semi-steady inlet into the lava lake. And since then, USGS has put out another video that is their version of this time-lapse sequence.
Before going into that, commenters are saying just how strong your ventriloquist game is.
Yeah, I couldn't say it any better after having said it that one time like that. So I thought I would kind of take it from there. And so here we have picking up the time-lapse sequence that the USGS version put out here. So they have it looped 3 times. They do say that there are minor changes happen like this occasionally. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit here. Show you guys. Have a little bit better resolution and time, right? Instead of having one picture every 15 minutes in a webcam like the way we get it, they can actually get more of them, put them all in sequence, and a little bit better resolution like we're seeing in here. So pretty cool stuff there. And just minor changes. I think of this as like the nozzle, the output of the volcano, right? Where it was coming out from just 1 point before, now it's coming out from 2. So it's really a minor change, but it's an interesting thing to talk about as we follow along what's happening with the volcano here. So here's our first image we started off with. This is taken March the 7th, so that's already 5 days ago now. That was when this event really occurred, and at this point you can kind of see there remains the crumbled edge of that secondary perch pond that was in between the main lake, and then the top of it that kind of crumbled down as all the lava on the inside drained out through here and then through here as well. We can see that change from this photograph from the one we saw earlier, right, where we just saw the lava coming out of the base of the cone without this big pile of rock. So this gives you some idea without being able to see into the lake as much. It's hard to imagine how much lava is going in there and how much is piling up, and the scale of this thing is gigantic. We try to superimpose some vehicles in here so you guys could kind of see the size of it, right? So this is a big feature over here, this perch pond on the side. And think about how quickly that whole thing built up and then collapsed down. That gives you an idea of how much output's coming out. Even when we say it's been going down and the gas emissions have been going down, it's still putting out a pretty sizable amount of lava that can generate these massive features that we're seeing here. Okay, so here, one more view, a little bit wider angle, so we can kind of see the edge of the main island right here. It's got some lower benches, some higher benches. You see a lot of these exposed islands these darker clumps of rock that are exposed through this lava lake. And in here, it's kind of a flatter crust. So becoming solid, but still very thin. You can see lava glowing through the cracks, and that seems to be the case all the way through here. And as we've been talking about, this edge over here seems to be the one that's been closing in. Now, this is March the 7th still, so 5 days ago, and at that point in time, we still had some lava flow spilling over into this I'm not sure what to call this little section, this little bay of the island over here, right? Whereas before it had actually been gone around from what we've been calling the South Bay way over there, had receded back into this South Island Bay, and to the point where it's building up this perched rim edge way over here. You can kind of see it now more. Maybe it's more of these pieces of crust that are piling up and damming it up, and eventually these dams all merge together, or it seems like there's different ways that this perched edge can form, but you can kind of see a little bit of it right there, the beginning of it forming. And by today, we'll bring you guys up to date. We'll show you guys that. First, I just want to mention, here's a raw plot of Wikahuna of our ground tilt. So we are here all the way on the right side of this plot over here. So we've actually just gone through another big deflation, and we're coming out of another inflation. That's what's happened since our previous deflation-inflation that happened earlier last week, within this past week. And these weren't quite as close together, but I was kind of wondering if we're going to have another sequence of 2 deflation-inflations back to back. And it took quite a bit longer in between them, but maybe they're more frequent. Maybe it's not a doublet. It's hard to tell what these patterns really mean. But interesting to see that this is one of our main signals now. And as we've talked about at the Puʻuʻōʻo eruption, which is over now, these signals were the ones that could change the shape of the nozzle and change the dynamics of how the lava was coming out and how it was emplacing itself onto the surface. So I point this out to show you guys that since that happened on March 7th, which was right in here, right, so that kind of burst out happened like all during this inflationary part right in here, I believe. And since then, we've drained away more. So I want to fast forward here and look at the S1 camera and look at a time lapse I've put together from these USGS cameras of starting with that time, but also going on since then. So you can kind of see that once that burst happens, we have a steady lava stream right here. That secondary one that first let out that big surge dies off, and the trickle mainly comes from here. So we're going across day and night, and we're looking for the glow at night. And as far as we can see here. As far as we can see, there's no connecting lava at the surface anymore to the inlet point here at the base. And this is not as easy to see in this S1 camera, and part of it because there's a lot of steam that just flew by, because it's been quite rainy in the last week here on a volcano as well. So, but just to kind of show you guys, here's a current 24-hour time lapse put out by the USGS. And so the most obvious thing you can see looking from the south is our original inlet point and a second inlet point right over here to the side of it. Whereas that main channel, and I see a little bit of glow of it because 24 hours ago it was still a little bit glowy in there. And by now it's kind of zipped up. So just like this western part of the west vent, putting lava down at open channel, crusted over and encased itself, so did this new northeastern section outlet. And right now it's mostly visible by looking at the pattern of the surface of the lava lake. So before we move on from the S1 camera, I just want to point out here, if you guys have been following on HawaiiTracker.com, you can see that Dane caught here some of these steam updrafts. And lavanados, perhaps, or
yeah, lavanados is the official term.
The official term for Hawaii Tracker.
yeah, lava bergs, lavanados, and but there's a few others, lava marinas.
Yeah, a couple of them right in here, right? So I doubt we'll hear USGS saying that, but interesting features, whatever we might term them officially. Yeah. So mahalo for catching and posting that, Dane. Check that out if you guys want to get a closer look there before we move on. Yeah, so that's part of the pattern of all the steam. So one of the reasons the F1 camera, thermal camera, is so useful is it sees through all that steam. So here we're going to look at this view from starting at the burst of the lava lake, and then the trickle since then, and then the crusting over that happened at the very end here. Check it out, and I'll zoom in. You guys can see here. There's the trickle. There was a transient one that let the surge out. So we're looking at this area and still exposed right in there. And it's going to zip up here. There it goes. Now it's all dark in between there. You see the outlet point slightly to the northeast and slightly to the southwest, our original one right over here. So that's really the pattern. A little bit subtle to see. We switched to the USGS camera the last 24 hours here too. And kind of zoom in. You can see now that I point out maybe more clearly, there's this double pattern of kind of a V shape that goes out this way and a V shape that goes out this way right in there. So interesting that we're changing the nozzle. We have kind of a forked exit point, and it comes two different pathways through this pile of rock that's over here on the margin of the lava lake. You could then go into the entry points of the filling lava lake. And the other thing you can see here that's mostly visible is you really can see how we've now really closed in the size of the lava lake, right? And that's why I wanted to show you guys how this deflation pattern we just went through is relevant. Because this whole section over here in the south, it's kind of the most recent terrace that was covered in lava has now been drained, and we now have seemingly a perched wall. Maybe some overflow still right over here along the edge of this island, right? Here's the edge of the island, right there. So the crust that connects to the island began here on the east side, has worked its way all the way around the south, and is now essentially encroached on part of this western side of that island right in there. That's interesting to see how that's kind of closed off to be more of that oval shape right in there. And then our North Bay, as I've been calling it, has been receding as well. You can kind of see it's still showing some lava crustal overturning, perhaps the foundering process, or perhaps it's some oozing. It's hard to tell just from the thermal images, but you can certainly see there's a lot less activity on the fingers over here than you see at the edge of the lake right in there. Right, and likewise, we still have all of our islands, smaller islands within the smaller lava lake, all still exposed, and that's something we've been seeing a pattern of every time we have a deflation part of the deflation-inflation cycle. It seems like perhaps the gas amounts go down, and the lava is a little bit denser, and so all the stuff that's floating in it can float a little bit higher. So it's interesting to see that pattern kind of continue there. So the most recent still image. It's much more convincing. You can see really how much less is going on here in the south and in the north as well. All right, so a lot of changes in the nozzle. The lake's closing in. That's most of what's happening here at the summit. So I want to kind of zoom out here and play you guys sped up the whole sequence from the thermal camera here, so you can kind of see this whole closing in sequence all the way. Let's see, we're back. Eastern half is crusted over. Lava still going all the way around the backside of the big island. You can kind of see it pulses through the first big deflation-inflation cycles. And then more recently, it's closed in all the way to here. I might play that one more time again. Right, eastern half crusting over. You can see that that northeast section had been active several times before, putting out lava flows that fill this trench. And so this is not necessarily a new exit point. It's just when it's been less favored until recently, right? Interesting sequence there. So yeah, that's the time-lapse sequence for the whole eruption. We also have a new video from the USGS. That's a virtual fly-through. So they're using 3D photogrammetry. I'm not sure how to say that. But they're compiling all the aerial imagery they're taking from the helicopters and making these 3D models. And so here's an animation that they've made, a fly-through of what this looked like on March 4th. So about a week ago or so. We've already had a good amount of that closing in of that western part of the lava lake, whereas the eastern part over here has been crusted over for quite a while already. We're approaching the island. The island seems to be fixed now. It's not been moving side to side for a while, although we believe it is still going up and down as lava is filling the lava lake and going beneath this crust and essentially lifting it all upwards by filling in below. And as it lifts upwards, it is pulling away from the walls of the crater, which is flared upwards, and that allows lava to kind of peak up and fill in the cracks, warm ring along the edges. So interesting fly through there from USGS. A lot of great stuff being put out by them, including, now we're going to just look at the map view here, thermal image GIF going back all the way to December 22nd, showing the evolution of the thermal imagery. Same kind of pattern. You see the eastern half cresting over and closing into a much smaller shape right over there. Interesting. Now that we've come this far, we're approaching a 3-month milestone of this eruption. In another week or so, we can kind of look back and see how everything has changed, and all those rapid changes at the beginning have become slower and slower, but still quite a lot of changes happening now. The size of that island originally, right, that was filling that original lava lake that was at the very bottom, is now about close to the size of the lava lake that's remaining in the end, right, which is way over here. Maybe you guys can't even see that yellow color. Draw it again. Over here is where lava lake is ending up here at the end. All right, so here's our lava depth graph from the USGS, and so you can kind of, it's been fluctuating up and down quite a bit. It's been climbing very, very slowly, a lot slower than before. You're getting between the ups and downs. We're now up another meter since we were about last week or so. So you can kind of see these small up and downs right through here, and overall pretty flat, gradual, slow increase is what we're seeing here.
We have a $5 super chat from Patricia Boyer. Says, just good job emoji. All right, thank you.
Hello, Patricia. All right, so that's the lava lake depth, and we'll go to the USGS update here, and we can read off that the most recent value is 221 meters, 725 feet. So SO2 emissions still elevated. March 7th, it was 800 tons per day. It's been 800, it's been 700, it's been in that range or so, more or less below 1,000. So we can look at the graph here. Here's a graph looking for the whole past month. Well, now 2.5 months, almost 3 months from the beginning of the eruption. So it peaked up around this 50,000 tons per day, according to this graph, right in here. Early on, dropped off pretty quickly within the first week. And you can see our scale here, 10,000 tons per day, and zeros right here. So in the range of 5,000, 6,000 tons, and kind of declining to the point where more recently, all of our measurements on this scale look like they're all next to the zero, pretty close to the zero down in there. So we really need to go back to this last month graph zoomed in. So now, just like all the graphs that we have to look at on here, we have to look at the scale. Tons per day goes from 500, 600, 700, all the way up to 1,300. So 100 tons per day increment. And now you can see a little bit more easily here if the bottom one is 500, 600, 800, 700, 800, 1,100, about 1,000, about 900. So you can see there's been some variation up and down. And we've speculated that perhaps this has something to do with the deflation-inflation cycles and variable releases of gas, which is something that has been documented for the previous lava lake at Halemaumau 2008 to 2018. So that wouldn't be a surprise to see that happening here. But we don't have enough resolution to really see that. But we do see that the whole window for the whole past month, the whole scale, the highest value is less than 1,200 tons per day. So a whole month now of this variability at the low level. Although you can kind of see that in this later half of the month, we've had many more of these lower values than before. So we'll keep an eye and see how that progresses, and if we keep a higher level here, or if we keep seeing lower values like this despite the deflation-inflation events. And of course, there's still VOG being put out by the volcano because of that, and there has been crazy winds and crazy weather. So people might smell VOG possibly anywhere on a whole island. Maybe it's what this VOG forecast map is showing you guys right here. So maybe not strong any one place in particular, except perhaps right near the caldera. So at some points in time here in the southwest part of the island. But for the most part, you can kind of see that the winds is putting it all over the place, all over the island. And coming back to the deformation data here, looking at the 2-day plot from the USGS here, you can kind of see that we've come out since this morning at a deflation typical pattern. long, slow decline, and a long, slow inflation as it regains itself, right? Normally concave down, concave up, and concave down, like that. One thing that, let me see if I can find that other plot again, because not as visible on this one. One thing we can see on here, this is just the Uikahuna, so our scale is 1 microradian from about a range of 9 or so, right? We can kind of see, here we are, the right end of the graph. But we actually had earthquake on Mauna Loa yesterday that we can talk about here. We had an earthquake on Mauna Loa that we'll talk about later that happened here. And we have an earthquake that came from Kermadec Islands near New Zealand that we can see here as well. So when you have the scale, you have the instrument on a piece of ground that's shaky enough, wiggly enough, it can really amplify some of these signals more than others, depending where the source is and the path of a energy that goes from the earthquake rupture to the Uikahuna Bluff, where this instrument actually is located. All right, so just finished off the deformation here before we turn to our first set of questions. And you kind of see here for the last week that it has been a few days, but it hasn't been a whole week since we had a deflation-inflation event. So not quite clear the timing relation of these. Because we have this green line on the graph as well from Puʻuʻōʻo that's showing all its big daily variations, and we know that Puʻuʻōʻo is kind of crumbling in on itself. This is throwing this whole plot out of whack to the point where this whole last month plot is getting to be barely usable, right? Because we have our scale here from 0 to 20 to 40 microradians. These are big numbers. And we see the Puʻuʻōʻo line kind of with a long decline, a big slump, and then kind of more decline, all that. And that's kind of throwing off where our blue line summit signal of deflation-inflation looks tiny now. That gives you the idea more or less of the pattern of them. Even though they're tiny in the last month, this is now our 5th one, right? The 4th one just going off the screen here. All right, and as far as the GPS, it's the same as before. We're still having that spreading of the caldera, and the ground is rising around the caldera in some areas slowly. We haven't quite reached the same levels as before the eruption, but it does seem like there is some pressure in the volcano still building long term, right? That we're kind of curious if it'll manage to get out of this eruption, out of these vents, or if it's going to build something in the future beyond that. And only time will tell what that has to hold, right? And one last thing, kind of going back down here to the Puʻuʻōʻo cone, because we had so much rain, maybe these last values may be corrected at some point, right? But we kind of see we've had some variations in a signal over here in the last few weeks, right? It wasn't even clear if this might be going back up. It seems like it's dropped back down, perhaps, or it's kind of, you know, somewhere in here. There's just a lot of noise, which means a lot of stuff is moving, right? Imagine like shuffling a deck of cards with lots of individual pieces. Each individual card can move back and forth depending on where it is, right? And so if you happen to be happen to have your instrument right on top of the deck, you can kind of see this shuffling happening and wiggling back and forth. And that's what I suspect is the source of this noise. Is we've seen images of those stations on the rim of the cone, and everything's just falling in. And we're going to show you guys the videos and all the rubble at the bottom of the cone that's been documented in there recently. All right, and with that, bring you guys to our first break, and I'll turn it over to Dane here.
All right. So we are brought to you by Hawaii Tracker. If you enjoy this podcast or this live stream, best thing you can do to support it is to like, subscribe, share it. Sharing it really helps. We don't have a monetary budget for advertising, so you sharing it really goes a long ways to help us provide this type of content. Second way you can help is we've created our own social media platform based on trying to bring the communities together. If you become a member on there, hawaiitracker.com, become a member. It's where we post our most current news updates and interactions. Third way is maybe consider making a monetary donation. We take donations on hawaiitracker.com/support. We also like to thank our sponsors. We have 2 today, including one new one. Kilauea's Bar and Grill in downtown Pahoa. One of the centerpieces of Pahoa. If you're going to go there, it's, you're going to come Pahoa, you got to check out Kilauea's. One night, find twists on local kind cuisine. always something different on the specials. The prime rib is killer. Good, really good fish and chips there. And the second one that is new to the stream is Kalani Tours. Kalani is specializes in small tours on Hawaii Island with a national park certification. Then primary focusing on English speaking, but also has Japanese speaking interpreters. They have a very interactive, personal, and unique experience for the guests. We've just hooked up with them to become a sponsor. So yeah, we appreciate them jumping on with us, helping us be able to provide this content. All right, so with that, let's get into some questions. We got a few here today, some good ones. Hugo asks, is it possible the shape of the lava lake and the height of all the lava may be spreading the edges of the crater apart? So like a wedge type situation?
That's a good question. I mean, I suppose there could be some of that effect happening, right? You know, because there are some loose blocks on the sides. But I for the most part think that that's got to be pretty minor, because mostly that stuff was compacted during all the earthquakes that collapsed the summit in 2018, and I think that it's kind of settled already, so to speak, as much as it could have, a repeated pounding from earthquakes. So I think a more passive filling and kind of gradually getting it heavier and heavier and wedging it in. You know, it might happen a tiny bit, but I wouldn't think the effect is very big. Just my gut feeling on that, right? We don't have any official answer on that, but yeah, great question, great thing to think about.
Patricia Boyer asks, could the new feeder be because of the lava vent, the source is being covered? So the lake has submerged the vent mouth?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I tried to show that in that one video, really jerky, flickery video, right? That showed the lava lake rising up relative to the west vent. I think that's probably got something to do with it. You know, we've seen that thing be buried quite a bit, so that wouldn't be a surprise to me. You know, this is all just, you know, best guess. But yeah, that's the main change. Is, you know, the nozzle has kind of got gunked up, so to speak, right? Like as the lava is cooling and hardening, and we haven't seen a big surge that burst it open with lava gushing out of that thing since, I don't know, it's been mid-January perhaps, right? It's been a while. So that's really the thing there, yeah, quite possible. Yeah.
All right.
Patricia.
Derek asks from YouTube, is this current lava lake by volume the largest summit lava lake that we know of? And I did include an image there. It's kind of weird because like a lot of these things, like we're just trying to figure out the dimensions of the surface of these old lava lakes. It's like you get a photo and that's about it. You might get a rough sketch, but volume calculations off of that, it's like they didn't have, you know, DEMs, accurate to a half a meter, rendering the entire thing to do calculations off of. They had to do it the hard way if they did it then. One of the ones that immediately jumped out to me, you know, in terms of just big lava lakes recently, even if it's not a lava lake, it's like covering the bottom of the caldera. It's like 1919 to 1921. And even Kīlauea is pretty impressive in and of itself, that like lake that existed there in terms of the size of the pond and the depth. But going back further than that, it's hard, you know, it gets hard immediately.
Yeah, so yeah, this is a geologic map of the summit that Dane's talking about here. And so Kīlauea, the one he's mentioned most recently, is the one over here on the right, in this kind of greenish tone, right? That was active for a little bit over a month, right? So, so that's kind of, you know, if we ignore how long they're active and let's say a maximum volume that was lava at the same time, we could talk about the volume of Kīlauea. I'm not sure offhand the volume without looking it up compared to what we have now, right? When we had a lava lake in Halemaumau, so this is, let me change my color here so it's a little bit more visible. This geologic map, this is the pit of Halemaumau as it existed before 2018, right? Although 2018 we had where the star is, that new overlook crater that formed within it. But this crater was formed from the explosion in 1924. So before that explosion in 1924, this whole area was a lava shield. And on top of the shield was a lava lake. So at that point in time, a lava lake might have actually been just that size. and it was just spilling out huge flows that were covering everything downhill of it, all the way to here. And this is the one that had a chance of spilling some out of a caldera this way. But that's what you need to happen, is for it to build up to that level to do that kind of thing to get out of the caldera. Everyone's kind of asking about what happened when it fills up all the way. That's where it goes, but that's years and years and years away, and has to come back up to that whole area. This, you know, now we have a big giant hole that's this size in here that you got to fill in first. So yeah, maybe we'll play with the volumes and bring you guys a little bit more detail on that as well. There are tables from eruptions from the USGS that document volumes, best guess volumes, you know, through whatever techniques they had at the time. We'll have to relate which ones of those are lava lakes, and then kind of come back to it and maybe give you guys a ranking by volume.
One of the ones that gets me immediately on that and makes it more complicated is the lava lake as it existed prior to the 2018 eruption, because it was kind of just an open conduit at that point. And then the question becomes, okay, at what depth do you draw the line and say this is no longer this is the bottom of the lava lake, and this is the top of the magma chamber, or something along those lines? Seems like it would be highly arbitrary. As it's with this one, it's super clean. We know the volume, you know, precisely, and it's not arbitrary in any way, shape, or form. Right, but that's one of the things that jumps out to me about that question. So
it's interesting.
Tony, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, good point.
I was going to go to the next one. If you thought that one was a different kind of question, get ready. Tony asks, after a big earthquake and there are many aftershocks, his understanding is sleep is difficult. Would a hammock be a good option?
Some people would say yes, right? Some people that are, you know, like that kind of rocking and sleep well on boats and that kind of thing. Other people can't stand that kind of rocking. So, you know, but yeah, you know, if you want to not feel it, maybe, I don't know, you won't feel it well if you want to jerking strong, but you'll kind of be rocking yourself and be like, oh, why am I rocking?
Or you can just come to my house, because I never feel the things. Like, I just don't feel these earthquakes, like, hardly ever. All right. I believe that we do have one more. We have done this. We're going to get into one of these questions about Puʻuʻōʻo and the Lower East Rift a little bit. But this one's back at the summit. Will the heat of the new lava in the lava lake melt the rubble below to get back down to the lava stored below ground, or the original lava? The question is.
So like if it could erode its way down by melting, essentially, right? You know, that's a hard thing to do, because all that stuff underneath it has been sitting around cold and soaked in water for a while, and so that's really the thing. Is most of the water's probably been driven off and as steam, you know, so it's probably just solid hot rock. But even a hot rock could be freezing to lava. The temperature difference is too big, you know, when you talk about what degree is gotta get through, or get, you know, the threshold degree for it to actually begin to freeze, right? So solidify. I say freeze, right? But it's solidifying. Right? People don't like that word. We're combined with lava freezing. But as it solidifies, that's what it's doing. Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, that does it for the first round of questions. We will be taking more questions and getting them into the next round before we go too far into this thing. So if you have any, just drop them in the chat and we'll get them in the queue.
All right. So we're going to turn now to March 9th update, photo video update from the USGS. And here is a routine overflight of the Kilauea East Rift Zone. So we have an image here of Puʻuʻōʻo crater. And you see their most notable observation is more accumulation of talus, this rock debris here at the bottom of the crater. So the edges are still falling in, and that's not a surprise if we've been following along and seen the images of the stations torqued over the edge of the crater, and you know how that's been encroaching and changing for a while. So that's just the still image. So I think we'll just move on to show you guys the overflight video. So this is shown at 2x speed, circling Puʻuʻōʻo. You see a lot of that cinder from that original high fountaining event, and it overflows of the lava when it was a lava lake, more so on this eastern half over here. Collapse exit point for one of the flows that fed to the east. And there's all that rubble at the bottom of the crater there. It's still pretty deep. It was originally over 1,000 feet deep, I believe. It may have been filled in. It's hard to tell from here, right? We'll probably get some report from the USGS at some point, but yeah, it looks like a few hundred feet perhaps. Still steaming a little bit, not too much. Not a whole lot of gas coming out of there. That's something we can see from there as well. Here's a second video put up by the USGS, routine helicopter overflight of the East Rift Zone, doing a visual and thermal survey. So this is just a visual video and it's shown at 5 times speed, going from west to east. So we're gonna end at Kapoho after we start farther up the Rift Zone here. It's Sanford Quarry, Ala Ili Steam Zone. So quite a bit of steam in an area that never erupted, but magma came close to the surface. There's a Highway 130.
A lot of steam on Ala Ili, and like none on 130 is interesting, considering that's where we know lava got really close to the surface, was right by 130 there.
Farthest back, fissures 9 and 10. And coming up to Ahu'aila'au, formerly known as Fissure 8 right in there. There's some of the South Leilani over here, and Lani Puna was over here. You can see the big craters. Ahukai V off the screen to the south here. This whole fissure line that fed the Mackenzie flows. Mackenzie being down over here. 17s and 18. Kapoho is all off the screen that way. I don't think we're going to fly over Kapoho over here. Alright, so that's the USGS, and as we've been reporting on the rain here, I want to show you guys this video Dana has provided us, and that's after all that rain on that lower East Rift Zone area, quite a lot of steam. And Dana, if you want to jump in and talk about this.
Right, so this was the day after the police had to close the road. There was, oh no, this is the day they did close the road, sorry. There was a traffic accident down there due to the steam. It does not so bad in this part, but down that road it gets really, really dense. And the cops, to respond to it, they couldn't even drive. They didn't feel comfortable. They had to get out of their cars and walk. They showed me a video of it, and it was, you know, basically like walking into a cloud and just a little bit of section of road and feet. That was all you could see. That kind of density, and it wasn't anywhere else really on the roadway. That was the crazy part about it. It was just right hyper focused in that one particular area. And then a day later, much different. This was driving through the same area that was completely overwhelmed with steam in the previous video after the road was reopened.
Yeah, really interesting. So yeah, we've heard reports about how thick the lava is and how hot it stays on the inside and how long it takes to cool all the way back down, and talk about it, but to actually see it kind of in your face where you can't see anything else but it is a whole other issue, right?
Yeah,
this video
and it's different too, because you know, where else are you going to get you know, steam like that right on a very pristine highway? It's really an interesting juxtaposition on that one. But yeah, it's just one of the things that I was getting you know, people were asking is like, why don't you call it fog? Basically fog. And it's like, yeah, it kind of is. Except, you know, to me, fog isn't produced in, you know, geothermally and get vented out of the ground like it does here with the upwellings of heat and all that kind of stuff. So I was calling it whiteout steam conditions. Puna's just interesting when we say whiteout, it's completely different than when the mainland says whiteouts. You know?
Right. Lava whiteout is something that we've dealt with as you know, on a coastal plain near Kalapana for a long time. You know, with big rains over lava flows, and especially with tour groups, right? You know, becoming disoriented. Mm-hmm. And in fact, you know, there was a tragic accident relating to just that. You know, so lava whiteout is something that we do deal with, and you know, is a more serious thing for us here. Yeah, kind of all terminology aside. And what's different about this, kind of scientifically, what's interesting is that you know, there rains here all the time, right? And the top of the rocks, like, you know, roads get hot in the desert. You know, the top of the road can be hot, but really, it's that really core interior of the flow that's the hottest. And we had enough rain that it had to basically force its way down into that center, you know, hottest part, farther than it has before, right? So, you know, not like a slow seep where it can kind of slowly steam over a few days or weeks, but all super saturated all at one time. Maybe that's, you know, why we had such a dramatic effect, was that, you know, the rate of seeping into that rock, right? Something along those lines is kind of.
And I think that has something to do with it, because I was expecting the thick steam, the really thick stuff, to still persist for several days after this rainfall, just because what we've seen on the other steam vents. But it seemed to drop down to the levels when I drove through it in that last video, you know, after 24 hours, which was kind of surprising to me. I'm thinking it was dew point related, the steam that day, you know, because we do have Two Pineapples says he was just down there and it's still white out on the road in that spot. So, you know, we know in the mornings and the evenings it likes to steam more just because of dew point.
Right.
And yeah, but when they closed it, it was sketchy down there. As you can see, it's the thing that was crazy to me was, you know, thinking of fog, going through fog, you're not going to steam up your camera instantly as soon as it touches. But this, like, to get the shot of the car driving through, took several tries, because I would drive through and be like, oh, I touched a thing of steam, and it instantly fogged the lens and completely ruined the video. So like, any more steam than in that video, and it couldn't have done that.
Yeah. So
but yeah,
check it out, you guys, on HawaiiTracker.com. Let's see, you guys want to see this video. There it is. And let's see. We will now move on to Mauna Loa. So here's a webcam view of Mauna Loa. Last evening at sunset. You can give it a reload here and see what it looks like this evening at sunset. Quite a bit more white out. You kind of see as the fog came in, the clouds came in. All quiet on Mauna Loa up there. So I'm going to do what I did before. I'm going to put things in perspective here to start. Show you guys the earthquake rates for the past year of Mauna Loa. So looking at the whole past year, you can kind of see at the right end of it here that we are a little bit, have gone a little bit of a peak that is higher than anything in the past year. We have had other peaks before that were not quite as big, 200 earthquakes per week. Earthquakes per week is our measure on the axis over here, with this being 200, this being 300. And so we've got up to about 250, or maybe around 200 now, earthquakes per week. But this is not nearly enough compared to what we've heard from USGS geologists about the build-up towards eruptions, right? You know, even in a weeks to months ahead of time, this number should be in the thousands, probably. Right, so it seems like 250 per week is a lot, but we're measuring per week, so you really got to go to the per day, and you go to the per day, then we're less than 50 or so. And that's what really matters, is those can be in several hundreds to the thousands, or per week it's going to be straight in the thousands. Right, so that is the context. So looking at our current earthquakes page right now, you can see there's still earthquakes happening. Mauna Loa 2.1 above sea level, so still happening up in here. Still happening in Pahala, and still not happening a whole lot on Kilauea over here. So let's look at the earthquakes that happened over the past 10 days or so, and that includes a 4.2 and it includes a 3.2. Our most recent earthquake on a USGS earthquakes page is centered right here over the Ka'oiki fault zone in between Mauna Loa volcano and Kilauea, and it came in at a 4.2 magnitude at a depth of 26 kilometers, or about 16 miles down. So this is actually pretty far down, pretty deep, but this is an area connecting these two volcanoes. Let's check this out in a little more detail. Here's a cross-section of a Hawaiian volcano the size of Mauna Loa. And you can kind of see that at that depth of 26 kilometers, we're down here below the crust in the upper part of the mantle, kind of in the surrounding solid rock through which the magma is rising up and through. But this is actually a settling event of this upper mantle that's brittle below this very heavy volcano that's even bowling down a crust from its weight as it builds a pile of lava above the crust mantle boundary right up there. That's one view. You can kind of see here's a different view. We've actually had a lot of earthquakes in this Kīlauea area that have relationships to eruptions of Mauna Loa, but they're normally at the depths between 10 and 12 kilometers, or sometimes a little shallower than that, along this boundary between the oceanic crust and the base of the volcano of Mauna Loa here. There's also this zone of strike slip faults. The ground moves left and right, so there's a component of left and right and a component of sliding towards the ocean, and there's some unknown connection how this actually works. All this is happening pretty shallow in the depths, somewhere around 8 to 12 kilometers down. So our event is way down beyond that, kind of below that whole stack. And you can kind of see here a little bit of implied magma systems beneath each volcano. Let's look at a little bit more in detail at that as well. Here we have a progression, showing generalized progression from Loihi on the left to Kilauea to Mauna Loa. So here on the left we have a depth beneath sea level as a point of comparison. And here if I scroll to the top, you can see Mokuaweoweo, summit of Mauna Loa up here. It has a large magma system. That upper 1 kilometer above the magma chamber is that more brittle rock that kind of cap over top of the volcano there. And you can kind of see a large storage system from sea level and up, and then you kind of see more of the feeder system that goes below all the way down to, in the case of Mauna Loa, somewhere around 10-11 kilometers down. In the case of Kilauea, a little bit shallower, right? Kind of Kilauea is a little bit smaller, but similar system to Mauna Loa as we see it over here. So if we look at 26 kilometers down, we are way down here off of our plot, in fact, somewhere in the rocks in between the feeder of Mauna Loa and the feeder of Kilauea. It happens to be below the junction of these volcanoes at the surface, but at that depth, it's really more to do with the overall depth rather than location, nearby these feeder zones of the magma. Here's a tilt and GPS page from the USGS Hawaiian Volcano Observatory. Our most recent earthquake on a USGS earthquake. Back to the tilt. Week on March the 6th, we had an event that rocked the tilt meter upwards and back down to where it was before. We've seen some reports of deformation in Mauna Loa. The big difference is not a whole lot between before this event and afterwards, with just a little bit of shaking of the instrument in between during an earthquake that occurred. Just throwing the plot wholly out of scale here. So a big shift, but not really showing any of the minor changes in the volcano happening down here below. Same thing for the past month. You can see there are other smaller earthquake events that can cause little jumps up and down, but then back to the baseline here again. Okay, if we look at the GPS has been showing an expansion across the summit caldera, starting about mid-January or so. You can kind of see that over the last few months there has been no change, and certainly no recent change within the last few weeks in the volcano's spreading rate. Volcano is certainly building and inflating with magma towards some future eruption, but no imminent signs of any activity coming anytime soon. Here's our earthquake map for the island. You can see here's our cluster of earthquakes on the summit of Mauna Loa. And of these, if I zoom in here, the one right in the middle right here is a magnitude 3.2 at a depth of 3.4 kilometers above sea level. This is only half a kilometer below the surface of the volcano. This is above the magma chamber, and in fact many of these earthquakes actually are. It's possible to go on a USGS page and look at the whole past month of earthquakes. We can see here the whole map of all the earthquakes in the past month around Mauna Loa summit. And scrolling down, we can see that earthquake rates are not increased. You can kind of see a more or less average amount. There's no real peak. We're running at earthquakes per day over here. Maximum value around 45. We need to be somewhere in the range of the hundreds to thousands per day to see a build up towards an eruption on a volcano. And we are not seeing that at this point in time. We do a cross section through the earthquakes on Mauna Loa summit. I'll zoom in right in here through a box I've drawn on the diagram, and we can look at those patterns with depth. So you can kind of see here on the left is a depth, and 0, this is sea level, and the line about sea level right around here. You can see that all the earthquakes at the summit within the past week or so have all been above sea level. So there is no movement of magma from deeper to shallower, nothing like that's going on. more an adjustment above and around a magma chamber. As magma continues to fill it in, nothing to worry about there. And one last thing, finally, looking at Kilauea's tilts, we actually can see the signal of that 3.2 Mauna Loa earthquake registering Kilauea summit as well. Here it is on the Uikahuna station at the summit. We look at the Sand Hill station, we just see it, as well as the earlier 8.1, 8.2 Kermadec Islands near New Zealand showing up on a signal as well. So visible across many of the stations on the summit. A little less clear there. We can see an escape road similar. There's the 8.2, that's the teleseism from New Zealand, and Mauna Loa 3.2 showing up over here. No surprises there, nothing to be alarmed about. And there has been a statement put out by the USGS on that 4.2 earlier as well. And similar kind of thing, nothing to worry about as well. So mostly, again, that first one, 4.2, has got to do with the depth being 16 miles down, 26 kilometers down. The 3.2, even though it was much shallower, still an adjustment and no pattern, no eruptive pattern, but still certainly an adjustment to filling magma chamber there. So because of that, the USGS has been focusing more on preparedness. And so this week's Volcano Watch, by failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail, Benjamin Franklin quote. And they have put out this map, which is a modified version of one we've shown before that they've put out before of Mauna Loa. Right, showing Mauna Loa all within this kind of blue outline in here. And they've colored different colors, the relative time you would have before lava flows would reach from the summit or the rift zones to the ocean. And so when you have a combined eruption rate of something like 6 million cubic meters per day out of the northeast rift zone that goes towards the saddle over here, right? Then you're looking at lava flows in Hilo reaching populated areas within weeks to months after an outbreak. So that's good as far as being able to plan and evacuate and prepare and all that kind of thing, right? So there are other areas like all this yellow over here where Mauna Loa could come out of its northeast rift zone and flow to the south, or even south that wraps around to the east. And in this area, in this case, it could reach populated areas in days to weeks. So not weeks to months, but days to weeks in the yellow over here. The most dangerous, of course, being the southwest, where you have a combined high eruption rate, 12 million cubic meters per day, with steep slopes and short distance to the ocean, where lava can get there to populated areas and to the ocean within hours, right? 3 hours, 14 hours, 14 hours, 18 hours, 24 hours, 4 days, day and a half, 3 hours down here as well. So that's the area that is of most concern. Over here in the northwest, just kind of complete it out, days to weeks with that low eruption rate and kind of a longer distance to get to the coast over there, in the area of the resorts, right, by Halemaumau Bay. All right, so that's the graphic from Volcano Watch today, and you guys can go check out the whole article on HawaiiTracker.com has it. And there's some interesting links in here you guys can check out if you want as well, including some of the hazard sheets, some situational planning in case you live in South Kona and maybe you have kids in Ka'u and they're working in North Kona, you know, being able to make a plan. So really the best best action is planning and preparedness and all of that stuff. We'll make sure we cover that here as well too. So that kind of bridge the gap to get there here. This map of Mauna Loa, oh, I lost it. There it is. This one's actually showing the hazard zones. So you can see in Mauna Loa, this is just a colored area. And zone 1, summit, and the rift zones, there, and there. Zone 2 is area right below the rift zones, there to there. And here to here, this is all zone 2. And zone 3, all the way to there, all the way to Hilo. Hilo is in zone 3, all of Hilo. And can I say we have a couple of blind spots where the lava has a hard time getting because of topography, kind of there and there, right? But those are the hazard zones of Mauna Loa. I was trying to make it bigger. Let's see if I can get it to. No, it doesn't want to go any more than that. So we'll just leave that be. We'll move on to the fact that there are quite a lot of plans, including whole lava sheds that have been put out by the USGS, where lava can be compartmentalized into different buckets of the rift zone or the summit area. So depending on where actually to exit the rift zone, you could then plan accordingly of where the lava is going to stay and where it's not going to go beyond that. So there's quite a lot of planning done on the government side of things, science side of things here, because Mauna Loa is such a big and dangerous volcano. But there is that family side too, right? So they do have links to where you can get templates for family emergency plans, right? To figure out what you're planning, where you're going to meet, that kind of thing, contact information, go bag checklists, things you can consider to put it to putting in your bag if you got to leave in a hurry, right? Including all documents and your valuables, those kind of things, right? So you guys can check that out in your own time. And of course, there's also a link there to County of Hawaii emergency preparedness that has a lot of these other links as well, right? Linking to the state, HAIMA, Hawaii Emergency Management, and other plans for businesses, et cetera, et cetera. So depending on what your situation is, you guys can go check this out. You can get the link from the Volcano Watch article posted on hawaiitracker.com. All right, and so that is what we have in store today. Mauna Loa coverage, and we will turn to our last set of questions here before we sign off and wrap it up. So what have we got, Dane?
Right. Well, let's get into these. Patricia on YouTube has another good question. Talking about the lava lake with the sides crumbling. If there's a large enough chunk that were to fall in, could it cause the solidified state to shatter/break sufficiently enough to cause the liquid lava to overturn? The resurfacing event can be basically caused by debris falling. Can that happen?
Yeah, if you had a big enough chunk falling, and that's the real key, is how big a chunk could fall, right? And so maybe if you had, let's say you have big magma movement underground and it tilts the whole pit and a side of the cliff falls in, right? If you had a big enough chunk, it certainly could hit and cause an impact that could breach the crust and cause lava to come out for sure, right? We've had earthquakes break crusted over lava lakes and cause one-day eruptions before, just from the it's almost like if you have a bottle of soda pop and it's already been open, but you can kind of shake it one last little bit at the end and get a little bit extra fizz out of it, right? So you can kind of agitate it after it's all kind of closed in and get it to erupt again. It happened in 1975. Oh wow! So certainly that's a possibility.
So this other question is going to take a little bit of description. Gianna Jones asked if we had seen the news coverage from the international news sources about Mauna Loa, and I pulled one up here from Forbes, in which because I was like, what are they saying? Because I hadn't looked really. I don't look to them for volcano updates, but it says they quote. But over the past week, the Hawaiian Volcanic Observatory recorded over 200 small earthquakes below Mauna Loa. These and other observations of increased activity in recent weeks all point to an increased flow of magma into the volcano's shallow storage system, according to HVO. It's like, we've seen worse. We have seen worse than that when it comes to the media.
Yeah.
You want to say something about them?
Yeah, if you'll go ahead and finish your thought.
Yeah, we just you just got to know what the media is in a lot of these things, and they make revenue off of sensationalism. So if there's a volcano watch or some publication that the vast majority of the readership doesn't know about anyways, you just ship it, and just write something up, sensationalize, ship it. So it's nothing new, this type of stuff. At least this time they didn't claim that there would be refrigerator-sized refrigerators flying out of the volcano or something, because that's literally happened before.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's what they're saying is true, yeah, but it is sensationalized, exactly that, right? If you look at the earthquakes graph here, you can see, it's true that we have had 200 earthquakes per week, right? But that's like in a vacuum, and that's why it's important to have guys like Frank Truesdell to be able to say, well, before 1975 and before 1984, here are the patterns that we saw. It took thousands of earthquakes per week. It took hundreds of thousands of earthquakes per day sometimes to get to that point. And so if you guys have not seen that video, go back and watch the video of earthquakes in Mauna Loa, Frank Truesdell, and we've clipped out all the stuff that's not relevant, and it's just that stuff on there. Yeah, he's got a full talk also available from USGS that talks about the whole when will Mauna Loa erupt next and all of that was just put out in January, just a couple months ago. So none of this stuff is new. It's just people picking up on it, having a fill space or what have you, right? It is a volcano. Magma flows into it. It has been flowing into it continuously. If we look at the GPS for more than 5 years, right? So that's what it does. Sometimes it does it a little faster. Sometimes it does it a little slower. It might be doing it a little faster right now. I would agree. Is it reason for concern or news? Some people seem to think so. We've seen news even of just the tilt meter going spiking, and people were saying, "Oh, look, that's going to be an eruption because the tilt meter spiked." So nothing, that's just not knowing what you're talking about again. So we've tried to cover in more detail why these values are not alarming. 200 might sound like 200 per week, but it also depends on the threshold of what you're counting. We've also talked about how they really are counting the ones above 1.6 to compare to the ones in the previous years as well, and we're not even putting that filter on here. So we're already there's quite a lot of variables here, and if you just don't do your research, then you can come up with something like that, right? So mahalo for pointing that out, Gina. Yeah, and yeah, it's true, but it's nothing new, and it's maybe one. You got to see 5 minutes of a movie that's an hour and a half, 2 hours long, and we're showing you guys the whole pattern of beginning, middle, and end, and they're just clipping out one little scene.
Right. Target audiences are totally different, that kind of stuff too. So yeah, it's nothing new, and it will happen again, I am sure. And it will be an issue in the next eruption when there's photos from 2018 flying around like it's happening then. It's just gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean,
we have a super. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It has been waking up. Has been waking up for years and years and years. We've been saying for years it's going to erupt in just a few years and just a few years, and it's still just a few years. And so it's still time. Right. It is still waking up, and it is still time to prepare. And that's all we can do and talk about it. And that's largely why we do our updates, is to keep the conversation going all the time. Rather than just once in a while and like, oh, I heard something about it. Therefore something's happening. It's like, no, we can talk about it all the time, and then we can actually point out when something different is happening, rather than when you happen to just come across your desk.
Yeah. We have a $35 super chat on YouTube from Gary Bryan. He says, appreciate the updates. Thanks much, guys.
Mahalo, Gary. Mahalo, everybody.
Yep. All right. So we do have one request here. One person is asking you to pronounce the new name for Fissure 8.
The new name for Fissure 8. Ahu'aila'au.
Mm-hmm.
Ahu'aila'au.
Yep, Ahu'aila'au. Yep. It is a little bit tricky your first time coming across it, especially when you just see it on paper. But yes, that is it. Ahu'aila'au.
Yeah, I'm sure that there are some people who are probably
pronunciation
challenged. And they were thinking, oh, finally Puʻuʻōʻo is done. I can stop saying Puʻuʻōʻo or not saying Puʻuʻōʻo or Puʻo or Po or Puʻuʻōʻo or whatever it is, and now here we come up with Ahu'aila'au. So keep practicing, guys. Ahu'aila'au.
You'll get them. All right. I do want to shout out some of the donations that we have gotten on the Hawaii Tracker site. We have a few there that have come through. It really helps. Brian B., Mel S., Judy P., and Crystal L. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. What is the translation for that? We were getting asked on YouTube. Well, do you want to take that one? Or should I? I can try.
You made a whole video about it as the first thing, right?
Yeah, we have a whole video on it.
2 whole videos on it.
True.
Where the actual people who have interpretations of the name have actually spoken on it. Right, so but go ahead. Yeah, I mean you can break it down.
Right. Just briefly, the way check out the videos. They're really good. They kind of show you what he's talking about as well. But Ahu simply translate to a mound or a shrine, an altar, in this case. And Aila'au is an alternative volcano deity from Hawaiian legend that Pele replaced in the 1500 legend. And can now always come back. Like that's the kind of the TLDR rundown on Ahu'aila'au, the name. But do check out the videos. They are on our channel. Really get you if you want to know about it. You want to see why this name was selected. That's the place to find out.
Yeah, and we will have more coming at some point too. We're trying to collect more of the stories behind this and share them with you guys at some point as well. So there is more backstory to this, but that's first pass at it. There is to listen to the people who propose the name and what it means to them and what they took, and of course, that means names can mean different things to different people. That's totally fine as well, right? But that is for sure. Good summary.
All right. Well, that does it for me on the questions end.
All right. Well,
Thank you, everybody that tuned in and gave some good questions today. Appreciate for the super chats and the donations on hawaiitracker.com/support. If you like this type of content, like, subscribe, share this video. All right. Back to you, Phil.
Well, that's it. Mahalo, everybody. For Dane DuPont, I'm Philip Ong. Aloha.